During what months of pregnancy does a woman begin to look pregnant?
September.
Well, it's that month again, and it's time to talk about Oscar predictions. But before we get into it, there are a few things I want to go over. First of all, I have seen a few comments on a lot of my older Oscar prediction articles saying, "Oh, I can't believe we don't have this," or "Maybe it's time to update these." I update my Oscar predictions every month, and if you go to my channel, you will see the most recent one. So if you're watching this in December or something like that, it was closer to the Oscar predictions, don't assume that this is my final predictions or whatever. Just be aware, I update them every month, and just check my channel. That's all you need to do. And maybe subscribe. It's not a hard sell, but you can if you want. I have a lot of videos about Oscar predictions and also movies and video games. So, whatever floats your boat. I'm not going to push it too much. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk about is, and this is very important, I totally called this last month. Last Oscar predictions video I did, the news was announced about the Best Popular Film category. I said I'm not going to predict any nominees because I don't think this is going to carry through. And wouldn't you know, it didn't carry through. It only took them 1 month to cancel it. Or, well, they say they're going to rework it and try to figure it out or hold it off till next year. We don't know how that's going to happen or if that's going to be a real thing. I think that I'm just happy they're not going to do it this year. And it means Black Panther can contend in the Best Picture race. But with that being said, one other thing I need to say is that, unfortunately, the Academy does seem to be serious about those rumors that they're gonna hold off some categories until like the commercial break, because they're trying to push for a 3-hour show. I am not too keen on that. I mean, the short's fine, but everyone else, people work hard to win Oscars, and you should televise them. And you're all about, making it shorter. Don't have a bunch of lame comedy skits with the actors, or don't, they're trying to make it more hip. Just do the awards. That's the one way to make it shorter. But really, I hope we don't follow through with this. The real Oscar fans, we like that it's long. Sorry, just something with my headphones there. But the real Oscar lovers, we enjoy watching the show. We make it a big event. We get a lot of fancy food. We get our friends. We invite our friends and family. Have big Oscar watching parties. The same way football fans have Super Bowl parties. But okay, with all that being said, it's time to actually get to the predictions. We have quite a lot of predictions to go over, so let's get started. Best Documentary Feature. Okay, so right off the bat, I need to address something. So, Whitney, Can I Be Me, has now been replaced with just Whitney. And no, they didn't change the title of the movie. It just so happens that there are 2 documentaries about Whitney Houston. And I believe Whitney Can I Be Me was a 2017 film, according to IMDb, so I think the other person who was counting this must have gotten confused too. It's the other Whitney film, which is the one that my mom's friend was the producer on, and is the one that's released this year and is getting better reviews than Whitney Can I Be Me. So it's very confusing, but that's why I have Whitney, just plain Whitney, in nomination. Let's just hope that the Oscar voters don't also get confused about this scenario. Outside of that, there's not a whole lot to say. I moved up RBG, so it's nominated now, but I don't know if it's gonna officially be a thing. It's Best Documentary. It's hard to know, and I feel confident in predicting Won't You Be My Neighbor to win. But outside of that, yeah, it's Best Documentary. It's probably going to be one of those categories that's moved to commercial break, so that tells you how much the Oscars care about it. Okay, moving on. Our next category is Best Foreign Language Film, and this one is interesting to talk about. You'll see that Roma is still on number 1. And Roma has... Okay, so every year there's like one movie that I totally underestimate, even though everyone else has it. And I don't really know why I continue to do this. I guess, like, I'm always looking at what other Oscar predicting sites are saying, and I always try to be a little bit my own and have films that other people don't have, and don't have some movies that everyone has. I guess I did it once with Room, and I said Room was going to be a big thing, and no one else did, and I'm still have bragging rights over that. But with Roma, a very similar title the more I think about it, this is Alfonso Cuarón's black and white Spanish language film. And a lot of people said pay attention to this in the top categories, and I didn't listen. And then the trailer came out, and it wowed everyone, and it premiered. And now you'll see I have moved it so it's nominated in a bunch of categories now. I'm not underestimating this film at all. I am fully expecting it to do well. Okay, also nominated, also in this category, let's see, Shoplifters, Dogman, Capernaum. It's hard to know exactly what foreign films will be good, or even what films certain countries will submit. But I am including Girl, which is a Netflix film. It's a film with a title that makes it really hard to Google, but apparently it is about a transgender girl. Or, also Everybody Knows is Penelope Cruz and Javier Bardem. We don't know if that's going to be a thing. We don't know if Italy may be submitted. Is it the same country that's doing Roma? Maybe. I think Everybody Knows is Spain and Roma is Mexico, so they still have a chance to get nominated. Okay, with that said, let's move on to our next category. Best Animated Feature. Okay, so I changed virtually nothing with this one. I moved around some of the lower tier films, but the top 5 remained exactly the same. There's just not much to say at this point. I still have not seen Isle of Dogs or Early Man. I should probably get on watching those. I don't know, Isle of Dogs, that trailer played in front of literally everything, and I'm just so sick of that trailer. So, but I gotta watch the film eventually, so it's probably on Amazon or on demand. So I'll get around to watching these movies. And Wreck-It Ralph 2 is sort of the big question mark, because we're like, is there actually a good movie there, or is it just an ad for everything Disney? Because that's all we've been seeing from the commercials. Okay, so moving on. Our next category is Best Sound Mixing. So you'll notice that the top 5 are exactly the same. I didn't make any changes. Roma almost made it in the end, but I'm not entirely sure. And If Beale Street Could Talk. It's always tricky with this category, because sometimes they nominate big Best Picture movies just because it's a place to give it another easy nomination. And sometimes they nominate big blockbusters. So let's talk a bit about First Man. So that came out, and it's definitely getting very, very good reviews. People are saying we're right to be an Oscar movie. But then there's that oh-so-pessy little controversy that somehow it became a big, big thing. And is this going to have any effect on the Oscar race whatsoever? I really hope it doesn't. I think it's still definitely going to get a bunch of nominations. I think the controversy is only going to hurt it when it comes to winning Best Picture. I feel like it is a little bit tricky in the we still don't know what's going to win Best Picture, and we shouldn't. It's September. We still have quite a long way to go. But I don't know. I want to believe that when we get to the actual Oscar race, all this controversy has died down, because it's such a dumb, small thing to have a controversy about. Okay, so with that being said, there's not really much more to talk about regarding Best Sound Mixing, so let's move on to Best Sound Editing. So I believe the only thing I've changed is I've added Incredibles 2 now as a nominee. I don't know. It's nice to believe an animated film will get nominated in a category that isn't animated feature or original song. Maybe we'll get some more animated films in picture. That's the one thing that really makes me upset, because if there was ever a year for an animated film to win Best Picture, it was last year. I bet someone right now at Pixar is kicking themselves, going, man, we really should have waited a year to release our movie about a Mexican child separated from his family, because then it wins Best Picture. But anyway, there's not much else to say. I've moved Solo: A Star Wars Story down because I think people are already forgetting about that one. Poor Star Wars, poor Kathleen Kennedy. Hopefully they can rebound. Or maybe not. I mean, I'm not even going to get into that. Our next category is Best Original Song, and this category is interesting because we're getting to the point in the year where it's no longer just blind guesswork. We know what movies are going to have songs in them, and we know most of the titles. Some movies use their songs in the trailers, so we get like a snippet of them, and I feel at this point we have we pretty much have our nominees. We know that A Star Is Born is going to have multiple songs. I don't have a second song in it for it now because it feels weird to just do question marks. The Shallow, I believe Diane Warren is involved in the writing of that song, and supposedly it's the big moment in the movie, so it'll be good to finally see Diane Warren get an Oscar. Mary Poppins Returns, I think they'll probably just submit only one song from it, because that's a strategy that a lot of movies are doing to make sure that there's no vote splitting. Although you never know, and we haven't heard any of the music from that. Outside of that, I have Smallfoot in there, because they like nominating animated films in this category. It's the one category where they have no problem nominating animated films alongside live-action films. Outside of that, I don't think there's much else to say. We heard Revelation Boy Erased. All the other songs are just... like, the top 5 is exactly the same, and I messed around with the bottom 5. But outside of that, there's not much to say. So, moving on to our next category. Okay, our next category is Best Original Score. So, there's not a whole lot to say about this one, I feel. I've added Black Panther. We don't really know what scores are going to be good. A lot of the scores that you see in 6 through 10 are just from really well-recognized composers. And, by the way, I just want to point out that Roma does not technically have a score, that there's no background music in that film, from what I hear. So, that's why that's not predicted. Mary Queen of Scots, I will point out, it is in a lot of the below-the-line categories, but I did end up taking that movie out of a lot of major categories because I've heard early word is that it isn't that good and that it's very much just a below-the-line player. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just the direction that I'm taking it in. Outside of that, there's not really much else to say outside of that. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about this because my voice is getting sore. I'm recording this like early in the morning. Well, early in the morning for me. I get up really late these days. But, yeah, I'll talk about that some other time. But no, I won't. This isn't a therapy session. This is an Oscar prediction video. So, what's next? Next category. Best Visual Effects. Okay, so I've thought a lot about this. Top 5 is the same. I think First Man could be in a position to win the Oscar. Outside of that, the bottom 5 is moved around a bit. I think Rampage... I toyed with the idea of actually having Rampage as a nominee. The visual effects and what I've seen look very interesting, and I am kind of rooting for it now that it occurred to me it could be like the first video game movie ever nominated for an Oscar. And it certainly feels like something the Academy would do. They enjoy nominating a lot of... like, they nominated Kong Skull Island last year. They can have a WTF nomination occasionally, and I don't know. I am just someone who wants to believe in good video game movies. But anyway, there's not much else to really say. Alita Battle Angel I've considered because I feel like that might be one of the more odd choices the Academy goes for. It might be a big hit. You never know. People might be like, ooh, Big Eyes. We gotta love those big eyes. And then Tim Burton's like, how come we didn't nominate my movie? All joking aside, those are the films I think could get nominated. Also, Solo: A Star Wars Story, I'm keeping that in there because they always nominate Star Wars, and I feel that visual effects is like the one category that Star Wars is owed. They're gonna get nominated for each one. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, next category. Best makeup and hairstyling. So not a lot. I included The Favorite, Yorgos Lanthimos' new movie. I didn't include it for the longest time in many of these categories, but now it's gotten some very good notes, and I want to believe that maybe Yorgos Lanthimos made a good one. So it's popped up in quite a few categories, as you will see. Also, Stan and Ollie, John C. Reilly and Steve Coogan in a biopic about Laurel and Hardy. So that might be good. And the makeup looks, from the set photo that was released, it looks good. And Aquaman might possibly get in because sometimes they like a fantasy nominee. Outside of that, I'm not really sure what else could be nominated. You never really know until they announce the short list of 7 films. Because the short list of 7 films is always so shocking and so confusing about what gets on and what doesn't. It always totally throws you for a loop. Okay, with that said, best costume design is going to be our next one. Okay, so I've put Mary Queen of Scots down one, The Favorite up one. Mary Poppins Returns definitely getting nominated. I've said this for the longest time now. Like, recreating old... I think that thing's definitely getting on for production and costumes. We don't know how good the movie will be. I've heard some people say, oh, it can get in picture. Emily Blunt can get an actress. Like, let's wait to see the actual quality of the film. Because at Disney, they may have conquered everything else in regards to movies, but they still can't crack the Oscars, at least not in the major categories. But I do have 3 Disney movies predicted in this category. Mary Poppins Returns, Black Panther, and The Nutcracker in the Four Realms. Black Panther I have nominated in a few more categories this time. It's always like right on the cusp. Like it's either 4 or 5 or it's 6 or 7. It's always like right on the is it going to get nominated or not. And you'll see this pop up in a lot of categories. Also, Crazy Rich Asians I included at number 10 because they might want to throw it a bone somewhere. But I don't know. Like they don't really like contemporary in costume design. They very rarely go for it unless it's something like Devil Wears Prada or something. With that being said, let's move on to our next category, Best Production Design. Yeah, I'm starting to run out of things to say. If Beale Street could talk, I might have some good period. Fantastic Beasts might have some stuff. Really, at this point, okay, at this point, I feel like there's not much else for me to say in certain categories. And if there's not much to say, I'll try not to say too much because, my voice does feel scratchy. I'm going to go grab a glass of water, actually. And I'm back through the magic of editing. So, speaking of... That would have been great if the next category was editing, but unfortunately, it's not. It's cinematography. Damn it, I was one off. I was one away from making a really good joke. But let's talk about cinematography now. Dang it. Okay, Roma moved to the top spot, number 1. I mean, I feel like such crap, pardon my language, for not having Roma in this category at all up until now. And now, suddenly, I'm like, okay, gotta correct that mistake, moving it up straight to number 1. I don't know if it's gonna win, because I believe the last black and white film to win this category was Schindler's List. But that cinematography is pretty hard to ignore, and it's definitely gonna get nominated. Even if the film suffers in other categories, I can't imagine it missing out on Best Cinematography. Although, it is Alfonso Cuarón doing the cinematography, and they're usually unkind to directors doing the cinematography at the same time, but sometimes the movie is just impossible to ignore. I mean, if you saw that trailer, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, next category is Best Film Editing. So, now, this is the one I should have made the joke about. Aside of that, okay, Actually, I realized, because I'm sort of making a chart about what my predicted nominees are, and I realized that my top 5 in cinematography are exactly the same as my top 5 in editing. That was not planned, and it's probably not going to actually happen, but it could happen. And I think these 5 films are probably the top 5 films, period. The top 4, First Man, A Star Is Born, If Beale Street Could Talk, Roma, I feel that those 4 are going to be serious contenders in the Best Picture race. And outside of that, Widows, it feels like a solid number 5. But a few other films could take on the mantle. Number 5, Boy Erased, Backseat, or possibly Black Panther. We don't know if the Academy is going to be bold enough to make that a big movie. Also included Mission Impossible, because sometimes they like to branch out and nominate action movies here. They gave it to Jason Bourne, one of the Bourne movies. Okay, what's next? What's after that? Best Adapted Screenplay. Okay, now we're getting into the thick of things. And I'll say this again. If you ever are like, wait, I wanted to look at that chart a little while longer, you can always pause it. I'm sorry, I'm not talking well today. I'm not talking well any day, really. But the thing about screenplay this year is that last year, adapted screenplay, that field was pretty barren, and original screenplay had a bunch of stuff in it. And this year, it is the total opposite. Adapted screenplay is packed. I mean, look at that. Like, take that bottom 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and that can be a category all on its own. But I feel confident with the top 5 that I have. I like, and yes, it's mostly just the top Oscar players, but I debated A Star Is Born for a while, but now that movie just seems like such a huge Oscar juggernaut, it seems stupid to leave it out of screenplay. So, with that being said, also included The Frontrunner, and also Black Klansman. I saw that film. I realized that in my last month's predictions, I had Black Klansman as I had it as getting nominated for Best Picture and nothing else. And I debated if that was a good strategy, but I feel we're probably headed that way anyway, because you have movies like The Post that got on in Picture and Actress was just a traditional standard male nomination. So I feel like we're definitely close to a movie getting nominated for Picture and nothing else, and I feel like Black Klansman could possibly be that film. Because I think it's like always just on the cusp of a bunch of different categories, but it never quite gets in there. If it was an original screenplay, then I'd definitely say it's going to get on, but an adapted has a little bit more of an uphill climb to make. Outside of that, not much else to say. Best Original Screenplay. Okay, now you look at this category, you see what I'm talking about. It's kind of like there's a lot of wide open space there. So we know that Rome is going to be a big Oscar movie now, so I moved that to number 1. And now I've seen 8th Grade, and I feel very, very confident with calling that a nominee. And then after that, things get a little bit tricky. Backseat, supposedly it's still finding itself in the editing room, which can be good or can be bad. We've seen movies like Joy or Silence spend forever in the editing room. And I wonder if this Backseat's not technically its official title. Technically it's Untitled Dick Cheney biopic. But I don't know. It's tricky with that, because you get movies like Joy or Silence or that find themselves in the editing room, and they don't even get nominated for like SAG or Critics' Choice because the earlier groups don't see it in time. So hopefully it can still be a player. I hope that it can still work, because as I say in a minute, Amy Adams has a lot of skin in the game. Green Book, that trailer looked very, very Oscar friendly. I wonder if it might be too Hidden Figures-y. But then again, there's nothing wrong with Hidden Figures, and if it can fill out an empty space on the list, that's fine. And then The Favorite. Yeah, the 5 seemed like a good nominee, and then 6 through 10 I'm really reaching. I don't know what could get on. Peterloo supposedly is not getting great reviews, which I'm fine with because I was never a big Mike Leigh person. And then Isle of Dogs, I don't know. animated films and screenplay are just animated films in every category. I've talked about this before. I'll let it go. Okay, let's move on to the next category, Best Supporting Actress. And this category went through a complete transformation. Because we know that Claire Foy is now a big thing. She's something that a lot of people are talking about in First Man. She gets a lot of big scenes. So she's definitely getting on. And also, Olivia Colman in The Favorite. She, jumped up. And you know who jumped down? Margot Robbie. Sorry about that, but it's just the way the game works. One queen outsmarted another. As everyone says, Coleman is the one to watch in that movie. Also, Marina Tavira in Roma. So I have Roma in Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress, and it's tricky because there's a lot of newcomers in the film, and supposedly, I think what I have is right. I think the actress I have in supporting is supporting, and the actress I have in lead is lead. I could be wrong. I could be naming two actresses that are just have nothing to do with the film, that have very small roles. I don't know. I haven't seen the film, and I don't know who these actresses are. Hopefully I'm right, because I have heard very good things about the performances in the film, so hopefully I'm right. I've also heard that Elizabeth Debicki is supposedly the standout of the supporting women in Widows, so she could get on. And outside of that, there's not much to say, really. I included Michelle Yeoh as a lot of times for number 10. I'll put the crazy, wouldn't it be wild if this got nominated? So that's why I have Michelle Yeoh there. And Amy Adams, of course. I have her in the number 1 position, even though there's some talk and confusion about Backseat. She really wants that Oscar, and a bunch of people really want her to win that Oscar. So we're just hoping that the film comes out and that it's passable so that we can all rally behind Amy Adams getting an Oscar finally. Okay, at least we know she's going to win an Emmy next year, probably, for Sharp Objects. Next up is Best Supporting Actor. Okay, so, not much to say. Sam Elliott now looks like a contender, a very real contender to win an Oscar. And the other thing that I have to say is that I've switched Steve Carell and Timothée Chalamet. I think I heard someone say that Chalamet is going to go lead and Carell is going to go supporting, which, fine. So when you get to lead actor, you'll see that Chalamet is now in that category. Outside of that, I have Kaluuya and I have Mahershala Ali are now entering the race. Both men, I feel that they're definitely going to try to certainly diversify the awards, which, speaking of, Michael B. Jordan is this close. It's oh, do I have him on or do I not have him on? I feel like he's gonna, I don't know, I feel like he's the kind of person that can get a whole bunch of critics' love and then just barely miss in the end. We'll see what happens. Also, I saw Black Klansman. Adam Driver, I think it's definitely not out of the question to think he'd be nominated. It's definitely not out of the question that he could be nominated. My talking is not good today. But it's a very subdued performance. And a lot of times they don't respond well to subdued performances. Russell Crowe, I took him off for a bit because of the reason that he is a good actor, but a lot of the times he can be very subdued or can be the least interesting part of a movie. We saw this with Les Mis. It's funny, if you go back and look at 2012 Oscar predictions, everyone was saying, oh, Russell Crowe in Les Mis is going to be definitely going to be nominated and might win an Oscar. And then we all saw the movie and we realized he couldn't sing. Sorry, Russell Crowe, it's the ugly truth. But yeah, there's not much else to say, really. It's just, I think these are your nominees. I've heard some people talk about Sam Rockwell in Backseat. Someone said that it's much more of an impression than a performance. But I'm fine with that. I mean, I don't know who's seeing the movie at all, because it's supposedly very early on. So I think that's just a rumor and we don't need to listen to it. And now we've hit the big one. Best Actress. Oh boy. This category is absolutely stacked. So let's start by talking about Glenn Close. So sometimes a movie will exist for no other reason except just to be a vehicle for an actor to win an Oscar. You saw this with Still Alice from 2014. I think you debatedly saw this with Darkest Hour. I think that was very much just a Gary Oldman vehicle that got a bunch of other nominations because older people like it. Uh, and I think this is definitely true of The Wife. Um, because early reviews that I've seen of that film is that it is a dumb. Everything other than Glenn Close is subpar, and that it's not really a good film other than Glenn Close. But what people have been saying about Glenn Close is like very, very positive, and I feel that this might be just a year of, oh, we haven't given Glenn Close an Oscar yet? Okay, we may as well give it to her this year. I feel that that's what this is, and honestly, I feel like Glenn Close, if they're not going to give her the Oscar, then they're not even going to nominate her. It's either a thing of she wins or she's not nominated. And that happens a lot in the Oscars, surprisingly. But, okay, who else? Lady Gaga, definitely 100% going to contend. It's interesting because you'd think this would be her story, but earlier reviews are saying that Bradley Cooper steals the show from her, which, if you're stealing the show from Lady Gaga, that's very impressive, Bradley Cooper. You'll see him in lead actor in a second. Then I have Yalitza Aparicio in Roma. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, and also hopefully that's the right actress. I believe she is a newcomer, and they like newcomers. So it's weird to have her and Kiki Lane from A Feel She Could Talk in the same category. I feel like one of them could miss, but they both. It feels like only one of them's gonna get on, but both of them are gonna be headlining their films. And then we have Viola Davis rounding it out. So this is a Best Actress lineup that's 3/5 people of color, which is crazy. Especially when you consider all the white women who are lining up to steal a spot away. Julia Roberts in Ben is Back supposedly is an amazing performance. She's in the majority of the film. And also, Julia Roberts is Oscar royalty. They love... She's best friends with a lot of the biggest people in Hollywood. So you know they're just going to try to nominate her for it if they get the chance. And then Nicole Kidman, I've been hearing good stuff about her performance, but not so great stuff about that film. So that might be another example of just a vehicle type movie. Then I've heard good stuff about Melissa McCarthy, Toni Collette, and Chloe Moretz. Supposedly they're really trying. It legitimately hurt me to have to take Elsie Fisher off of this lineup because I saw her performance and she's amazing and I could definitely see her being nominated. But I don't know. It's a tight situation. It's a super tough category. You could just pick and choose any of these 5 ladies, and you could have a strong Oscar category. So we'll wait to see what happens. Yeah, not much else to say. Okay, Best Actor now. So this category is not as stacked. And I believe it's the same 5. Well, the same 5. I've switched out Carell for Chalamet, but it's basically the same 5. And I think Bradley Cooper is gonna win an Oscar. Guys, I've heard some people say he could win director, which is crazy. Imagine if he wins both. But I think he's definitely poising himself to win Best Actor. I think looking at the trailer, it looks like Jeff Bridges in Crazy Heart, really. It looks like a very transformative performance. And I think it's interesting to cast yourself in this role as someone who is aging and past his prime, when one could argue that Cooper is very much in his prime. Also, Ryan Gosling, from what I've heard, is that he's good in the film, but that he's like the 4th or 5th best thing about it, which is kind of what people said about La La Land. So I think he's definitely going to get nominated, but a win is going to be an uphill climb. Chalamet, I think, with entering sort of a Chalamet-essence, and then he's the kind of person that makes teenage girls go crazy, so he could get on. And then Bale, definitely by his film, and then Dafoe. So I saw the set photo of him as Van Gogh, and I'm like, oh wow, that looks amazing. You see it in still photos, and it looks great. But then you hear his voice, and it's very obviously Willem Dafoe's voice. I mean, that's a voice that's kind of hard to hide. I mean, and you never really heard what Willem Dafoe, you never really heard what Vincent Van Gogh's voice sounded like. So you could argue it's not really that distracting, but I don't know. It might be weird for some people. Still, I think the performance, it does look like a very Oscar-y performance, and Dafoe is a good guy. I mean, he's a great actor. I think he might be starting to get a little bit impatient, though, if he gets nominated for this and doesn't win, because he's had 3, and this would be his 4th nomination. So he's like, guys, I'm not getting any younger. Like, I need to find, like, a good Oscar vehicle fast. I need to talk to the director of The Wife. Like, write me a good Beatty part. But, outside of that, Jackman, Hedges, Washington, Redford, Hawke. I'm including Hawke for the first time because people say amazing things about his performance, but I feel like people might just be forgetting that film. So outside of that, there's not much else to say. Let's move on to Best Director. Okay. So, again, there are 4 African-American directors in this lineup, which is incredible. Well, African-American. Steve McQueen is technically British. We're just trying to be... I know, African-American sounds better. Moving on. So, Alfonso Cuarón, he could get on. So, in this lineup, we have 3 directors of color, which is crazy. And then 1 actor and 1 very, very young guy. I feel weird about Damien Chazelle, because he directed Whiplash and La La Land at such a young age, and then La La Land was like the biggest slam dunk Best Picture winner ever, and then it lost. So part of me is like, I hope Chazelle wins director. I hope Chazelle wins picture, and then someone else wins director. I was hoping Barry Jenkins. I was hoping like, oh, that would be a nice reverse, so they both get what they wanted. But I don't know if Jenkins is realistic anymore. I mean, good things about his film for sure, but it's very tight between that top 4. But some people might be like, oh, Cooper's winning actor. Let's give him actor and then not director. Or he could get director and not actor. It's very complicated. And then the 5th slot was a toss-up, and I went with McQueen. Coogler, though, I could see Ryan Coogler being a lone director nominee. Like, we've only gotten 1 of those, and it was for Foxcatcher, which was weird because I thought that was a really boring and bland movie. But I could see Ryan Coogler being a lone director. I could see him being nominated alongside his film, too. We'll talk about this in a minute, but Bo Burnham, I included him at the last possible second, because I'm like, oh yeah, there was a YouTube commenter saying Bo Burnham, and I liked Bo Burnham, so I'm pretty much just doing requests at this point. If you say predict this person, I'll predict it. Don't actually do that, because I'll see people in the comments like, Infinity War for Best Picture, and it's like, well, that's what they have Best Popular Film for, and this whole thing's getting messed up now. I'm just going to move on to our final category of the night, and obviously the most important, Best Picture. So, okay, yeah, just look at that. Like, at this point, my throat is super sore, and I'm running out of things to say. I think the top 4 is going to be the top 4. And then beyond that, it's just, I don't know what's going to get on. I think BlacKkKlansman could be a Best Picture nominee that gets Best Picture, nothing else. I think 8th Grade can get on. I saw that movie, and I'm like, yeah, that could happen. I saw both of those movies recently, and it's like I can totally see them being Best Picture nominees, and I feel comfortable feeling that neither one has a realistic shot at winning, but I feel that both could get on. And then outside of that, I really don't know. Green Book could get on. Backseat, we're hoping it makes it in time. Warrior Race looks very, very Oscar friendly. I hope that it works, and it's tricky with Miseducation of Cameron Post. We'll see what happens with that one. And Beautiful Boy. There's a lot of Oscar movies, and there are a few that I'm not mentioning. But outside of that, also the frontrunner, I guess I spelled that wrong because it's 2 words. That's my one obligatory mistake per video, but I don't really care at this point. First Man, I don't. So, regardless to what could actually win Best Picture, I genuinely don't know. I think all of the top four have their issues. If Beale Street Could Talk, the issue there is that the director's last movie just won Best Picture, and some people might feel like, oh, we want to give it something different. Roma is tricky because it's foreign language, and we've never had a foreign language film win Best Picture. And that's saying nothing about the Netflix situation. It's a Netflix movie in Best Picture. So that's tricky right there, but I personally would love to see a foreign language film win Best Picture because it would be great to see the Academy branch out and award different kinds of movies. And the more open-minded the Academy gets, the closer we are to seeing an animated film maybe win Best Picture one day. Mm-hmm. And then A Star Is Born, that looks like it could win. The trick with that one is, honestly, it's a remake, and the Academy might be like, it's much as we love it, it feels weird giving Best Picture to a remake. Although, from what I hear, it's supposed to feel like a brand new story. So, the more I think about it, the more I could see A Star Is Born winning. At this point, I'm not even predicting the winner at this point. It's A Star Is Born versus First Man, and First Man honestly could win too, but that's tricky because there's a little bit of a controversy with that one. Hopefully, the controversy is gone by the time the by the time the Oscars actually get here, people realize, oh, we have more important things to argue about. Okay, so that's the Oscar nominations. That's my predictions for September. If you want, you can go back and check out some of my other Oscar predictions or my other videos. If you're watching this and it's later than September, then check out some of my most recent predictions. I'm sure that I've changed a couple of things since then, because that's the nature of being an Oscar predictions. You have to update them every month. It's like an iPhone. Haha. So, thank you for watching this. I have to go, I have to go edit this now, and then I have to do other stuff, probably play some video games, and rest my voice for a while. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys later. Bye.